Good evening to all of you, our eminent speakers, moderators, and all our dear participants who are viewing this live streaming behind the YouTube channel. I welcome you all to the third and the final day of the international webinar. In the very first session of today, we have amongst us our eminent speaker, Dr. Ruby Sai, and our eminent moderator, Dr. Tinni Goswami. Dr. Tinni Goswami, she is the head of the Department of History in St. Xavier's College, Autonomous Kolkata, and the visiting faculty member of the Department of History in Jadavpur University. And she is the coordinator of the international webinar. I shall request ma'am to take over the session and introduce our eminent speaker. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Shrimanti, for giving a nice introduction. A very good evening to all of you. Today is the final day of our webinar on spiritual well-being and stress management, religio-psychological perspectives. I am welcoming all of you on behalf of Bhaktivedanta Research Center and Kolkata Study for Asian, Kolkata Society for Asian Studies. So today we have Dr. Ruby Sai with us. Dr. Sai is an eminent sociologist. She was attached with the Department of Sociology, Jadavpur University, for a long time, since 27 years. She was also attached with many foreign universities as well. She has a number of national and international publications on her credit. So today, ma'am will be enlightening us about public health, healing, and the role of religion in this COVID 19 situation. So, ma'am, I would like to invite you, and it's my pleasure to offer my heartiest congratulations to you, and please take over the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tinni. So this gives me a great pleasure to say something in this webinar. I am really thankful to Bhaktivedanta Research Center and Kolkata Society for Asian Studies for organizing such webinar and most important webinar. So today I would like to speak on public health, healing, and religion in the context of COVID-19 pandemic. You know very well that health is wealth. We always say that health is wealth. It is the universal truth, irrespective of any religion, caste, class, and gender. And health is wealth among Hindu, among Christian, among Buddhist, among Islam, among or Muslim, or among Jains, among Sikhs, among Judaism or Zoroastrianism or whatever. So it is applicable for all kinds of religions, not only among Hinduism or Christianity or Buddhism. The individuals and societies tend to respond to health problems in a manner consistent with their culture, norms, and values. So it is so much important that all cultures, all norms, and all values are related to this kind of health problems. Health is therefore not simply a matter of biology, but it involves a number of factors that are social, cultural, political, and economic in nature. The World Health Organization, or in short WHO, defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or injury. To be healthy means also having a sense of well-being. Good health is a prerequisite for the adequate functioning of any individual or society. If our health is sound, we can engage in numerous types of activities. But if we are ill, distressed, or injured, we may face the curtailment of our usual round of daily life. So, health can be defined as the ability to function. This does not mean that healthy people are free from all health problems. It means that they can function to the point that they can do what they want to do. So, even primitive humans were closer to the animals in that they too relied upon their instincts to stay healthy. Primitive humans recognized a cause and effect relationship between doing certain things and alleviating symptoms of a disease. During the Neolithic age, some 4,000 to 5,000 years ago, people were engaged in a surgical procedure called trepanation or trephining and cures of health disorders. The human body was regarded as a machine, disease as a breakdown of the machine, and doctor's task was to repair the machine. So, awareness was very important area, and awareness that disease could be caused by unhealthy social conditions and lifestyles spread through common sense and practical experience. Here, it is very important, especially in the role of public or in the context of public's health. We know that air, water, and place, these three things are most important in our life. So, a most significant improvement occurred when it was realized that uncontaminated food, water, and air, as well as sanitary living conditions, could reduce the onset and spread of communicable diseases. Infectious diseases was considered as the major threats to health. The world is facing such a crisis in public health for which it was completely not prepared and is still shocked and is far from recovery from this wreckage caused due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So the global public healthcare delivery system has crashed, with millions of people getting infected and dying every day. The COVID-19 virus attack has exposed the reality of healthcare worldwide. The most important nations are developed nations like United Nations of America, Italy, France, United Kingdoms have all been grueling to tackle the attack. If the conditions in developed countries are such, then one can well imagine the condition in developing countries. Developing countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, where already overpopulation, illiteracy, poor economies, political unrest have devastated lives of the masses. The attack by the virus has made life unbearable. Emil Durkheim, the famous sociologist, had stated in his work that times of change unleash currents of anomie. Anomie is that condition which signifies the normlessness, and this pandemic situation creates this kind of normlessness. Thus, currents of anomie have been released where people are striving hard to survive economically, mentally, physically, and socially. Obviously, the event of an infection can't be clarified in separation of the different social factors, for example, religion, caste, and culture, because each culture signifies one kind of system or one kind of way of treatment or one kind of way of adoption or whatever. COVID-19 is a new disease. It is understandable that its emergence had and spread caused confusion, anxiety, and fear among the general public. It has created some stigma also, which can be explained in such a way that it drives people to hide the illness, to avoid discrimination, prevent people from seeking healthcare immediately, discourage them from adopting healthy behaviors. So these are the stigma, and people becomes more and more vulnerable when they face some kind of stigma. So such barriers could potentially contribute to more severe health problems, ongoing transmission, and difficulties controlling infectious diseases during an infectious disease outbreak. Though the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, in short, IFRC, UNICEF, and the WHO are developing community based guides and global campaigns to prevent the effects of stigma on people and the COVID-19 response, but in vain. So stigma can be heightened by insufficient knowledge about how the new coronavirus disease, that is COVID-19, is transmitted and treated, and how to prevent infection. Here, we can give some example that the people, those who are stigmatized as COVID-19 patient or as other patient, so they are labeled as sick, and this sickness creates them one kind of segregated group, and this segregation creates them another kind of problem, and they are not then socially approved person. They then become sick, and their place is not in their home, but their place is in hospital, or they are recognized not by name, but they are recognized that time by number, by bed number. Just like criminals are recognized by number, so in prison or in jail, so these people, those who are affected, they are also known by number, by bed number. So this stigma is so important, and and old people are suffering, suffering especially those people who were affected. They were also stigmatized in society, in family, in among the neighbors, among all places. So, engaging social influencers such as religious leaders on promoting reflection about people who are stigmatized and how to support them, or respected celebrities to increase messages that reduce stigma, because stigma can create further problem, and it is not only a health problem, but problem in everything. So amplify the voices, stories, and images of local people who have experienced COVID-19 and have recovered, or who have supported a loved one through recovery, to emphasize that most people do recover from COVID-19. The WHO in their situation report 57. Here I am talking about few report only, 57 or 60 or like that, because there are lots of reports which was published by World Health Organization. Here I am mentioning only few reports. Report 57 has clearly rung the alarm bell for the world as more and more countries are reporting of corona positive patients, and also we see a rise in the global death rates. The number of confirmed cases worldwide has exceeded 2 lakhs. It took over 3 months to reach the first 1 lakh confirmed cases and only 12 days to reach the next 10 lakhs. In Situation Report 60, which was published by World Health Organization, we see that the global rate of infection and death remain high. So a very important dimension which has appeared before physicians is the issue of mental health of the masses, because it affects most, but that means the mental condition of all masses, of all places, of all kinds of all kinds of groups or all kinds of people, are all kinds of groups, especially young groups, children group, adult group, adolescents group, and obviously aged persons. So the sudden cumulative blow of the virus on the social, economic, political, and geographical aspect of human life has exposed the vulnerability of mankind, and thus leading to a significant rise in the number of patients suffering from mental illness. So mental illness is the most important issue in such COVID-19 pandemic situation. On 7th March, World Health Organization published an article on mental health and psychological resilience during the COVID-19 pandemic, highlighting the potential mental health impacts on children and the elderly. Because of this COVID-19 pandemic, the most suffered groups are children and the most suffered groups are elderly people. The pandemic and the absence of a cure for this virus has created a situation of fear coupled with anxiety and anticipation. People are so much affected, they are suffering for tremendous anxiety that what may happen, what they will do, or what they can do. So it is a great panic for all groups of people in the society, not only in India, but not only in Great Britain, not only in USA, not only in Italy or Sweden or whatever, in every place and in every and among every groups of people. Misconceptions are also there, and we have seen that World Health Organization has issued multiple awareness messages to warn people against this false information. Just I am telling you one misconception which was published by World Health Organization, or that in all newspapers we have seen that people who smoke tobacco are at a lesser risk of contracting this disease as their lungs are filled with layers of nicotine. So this is a great misconception. On the other hand, public health experts, especially I am talking about World Health Organization, because we always think about World Health Organization, and that's why I'm talking about World Health Organization, because what they prescribe, we are bound to obey, because they have done constant research, and after research, they had developed one kind of thing which is very much applicable or very much beneficial to all people. So World Health Organization experts found that smokers are more likely to develop severe disease with COVID-19 compared to non-smokers. So here you can see that the misconception was that the smokers are safe, but this is not true. Rather, non-smokers are much more important. WHO Director General Dr. Tedros, in his media briefing, urged a slow, steady lifting of public health and social measures, that is so-called lockdowns, because there was no preventive measures, there was no way to stop this pandemic. So it was only one measure or only one preventive measure, that lockdown and social distancing. So two things were most important, and that is social distancing and lockdown. And there was no medicines, no vaccines, no nothing. So only there was one preventive measure to shut down everything, and another thing that is the preventive measure was just to maintain social distancing. So because prevention as a better alternative to cure has been preached and practiced since time immemorial, and we can trace it like a proverb since 13th century. So prevention is better than cure is now a proverb. So successful measures of prevention not only help us stay healthy, but saves us from the pain of suffering a contracted disease, however curable. And thus, when cure methods are unavailable, preventing is all we have. Primarily, in medical science, we have two branched divisions: the group of hygienists, that is called preventive medicine, and the group of healers, that is called curative medicine. So here we got two kinds of things. Here I am also mentioning a little bit about epidemiology, because COVID-19 pandemic is the COVID-19 pandemic's area is basically epidemiology. So epidemiology is that branch of medical science that deals with preventive and social medication or finding. So assessing and developing ways within society to prevent the spread of diseases among populations. So it is highly true, or it is absolutely true, that prevention required greater government involvement in regulating the conduct of daily life. We cannot make hospitals or nursing homes, and we cannot take care from these hospitals or nursing homes. So if government take measures, then only this kind of diseases will get some way. Otherwise, there is no option. It is purely governmental measures. Now, how we can develop, or how we can remove, or how will we save from this kind of fatal disease, which is a purely airborne disease. So here we can say that spirituality is just the way of life. It is the way people find meaning, moral guidance, as spirituality and religion are functions of faith. Religion and spirituality have been recognized as having important relationship with health status of the people. It is a relationship among the three dimensions, which are health, healing, and spirituality. So healing is not an isolated event that happened at a particular point in time. The path to healing is different for each person and also different in each country, because what is applicable in Britain or in UK or USA or in Japan, that is not applicable in India or Iran. So each person thinks from their own cultural pattern, from their own norms, from their own value system. Different religions in the society renders different healing aspects through either its mythological stories or other healing practices. Because it is not true that we are facing for the first time this kind of fatal disease. It is not true. Our forefathers also faced this kind of disease. And even if we go back, if we think about some Vedic period, so in Rig Veda period, it was thought that Ayurveda was most important. It is not that only that we are giving some important medicines or some important measures, say for it may be preventive measure or curative measure. It is not like that. So religion helps us or helps an individual to avoid self-destructive behaviors. Religious beliefs and practices are an important getaway to cope from illness, which often leads to life changes. Among the numerous proposed ways of achieving well-being through the religious line of thought, I think prayer is the most common of all. Prayer is considered to be the second most effective way of coping from illness using religious ways. So prayer has an important role in the context of COVID-19 pandemic. So we cannot avoid this thing that is called prayer. Religion or spirituality acts as a sense of security to the religious adherents. Religious involvement acts as a new form of coping mechanism when a person suffers from health-related problems. So we cannot avoid religion and spiritualism. It was seen in studies that religious beliefs among the patients help them to cope from depression, reduce anxiety, suicide rate, less number of substance abuse, increased optimism in life, greater stability in marriage, higher social support, and so on. So, religious beliefs have some implications in the context of COVID-19 pandemic, and we cannot avoid these kind of things. Whenever we are staying in our homes or in our houses, or whenever we are thinking about social distancing or whatever we do, we are thinking that this kind of things, whenever we stay at home, we have nothing, we always pray. So prayer has some important role. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your presentation. You have described the status of public health during this grave situation of COVID-19 pandemic. You talked about the new normal, which is taking us towards a normlessness. You have emphasized on the importance of psychosocial and cultural aspects of the human behavior, perhaps indicating a cognitive approach towards this discourse from the sociological perspectives. It's very relevant to highlight the taboo or the stigma which has been attached to the COVID patients and how they are being identified with their bed number. Here, religion has to be instrumental to boost up the moral confidence of the COVID patients or the victims. Your lecture has an empirical approach where you have mentioned about the official documents to prove your hypothesis regarding the seriousness of the situation. You have also linked the aspect of mental health to help us to have a better understanding of the discourse, which has various aspects related to our society and economy. Being a sociologist, you have done justice to the theme from the perceptions of a social scientist. Ma'am, we have some questions for you. So I would like to take the question by Dr. Shantanu De. His question is, to what extent does there exist a connection between the religiosity among a particular cultural group and its ability to combat
So
epidemics?
we say generally that the person becomes religious, and when he or she shows some kind of inclination towards spiritualism or towards religious religions, so that time religiosity emerge in the emerge in the society. So if all people are religious minded, or if all people think some kind of religiosity, or they express their religiosity, then there is some way to avoid this kind of problems. So we think so religiosity has certain kind of remedial measures, especially in this 21st century, because it is it is it is not it is not applicable that within that in this 21st century we are all persons are non-religious. But there are which I have done a research in Jadavpur University, and I have seen that 99% people are religious, and their mind has certain kind of religion which they or not never which they not always express, but they are religious minded. So I have found certain kind of religiosity among these young groups, and in that context I can say that this can help the people who are affected or who will be affected in future.
Thank you, ma'am. I also have a question because as I have interest in public health studies, so in medieval Europe, we have seen as you also talked about the epidemiology. In medieval Europe, we have seen the epidemics like plague, leprosy, and there also we have seen like the matter of taboo was very much pertinent. But here we find two contrast theories. For example, those who were having plague, they were definitely being tabooed, or they were having some kind of social seclusion. On the other hand, those who are having leprosy, they, it was being said that the patients who are having leprosy, it was like a blessing for them to have such kind of a disease. So how will you explain this contrast while considering the mentality or the societal approach towards defining such diseases in medieval Europe?
So here you see that in 1830 there was plague in London, especially in London, which is the breeding ground of more important research. And that time people of London were affected by plague, and they left that London, that place, particular place that is called London. So, and it affected in 1830. Or and the 1830 it happened in proper London, which is so much developed cosmopolitan city. So it happened in there. And if we go back, that means into medieval period, we can see that leprosy was another kind of disease. And for that disease was specifically that particular disease in that period. And still we have, now you can see also some leprosy present. And if you go to Barracoon, so there is a leprosy center. So you can see now that disease also. But the thing is that the people who were affected, they are more religious, and because they not only they but also other people also, those who are not affected but who face some kind of health problem, they try to get some relief or to get some measurement, so that they can cure themselves. And it is the only practice of people. So apart from medicine, apart from doctor's advice, apart from technological development, or apart from medical technology, or apart from medicalization or whatever, so people always think about this kind of diseases, and they only think that prayer is the only solution, along with medicines, along with, but in medieval period they have only prayer only, but they had some kind of medicines, and that medicines in we can say that it is Ayurvedic medicines. That means the medicines where they got these medicines from nature. So nature gave them some kind of relief. So it is not that we are more developed and we are not we are giving much important or more important medicines. It is not that. In medieval period, in ancient period, they were accustomed and they had great knowledge about the use of medicines, about the use of their cure. So I mentioned that. And even if you go back, that means Hippocrates in 400 years BC, he also talked about this kind of diseases, and he mentioned that air, water, and place or space is the most important thing. And now we can see that air is most important. And this coronavirus appeared in Wuhan state of China, but it has spread. How it spread? It has spread through air. So airborne disease is also very much complicated at this moment. But that time also they realized, but that time it was not so much, this disease not developed in such a way as it has developed in such a way, because it has affected the whole globe. But that time it affected only few persons and few places and few persons and few people suffers for plague, few people suffers for leprosy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ruby Sain, Professor Emeritus, Adamas University, for giving an insight on theory of miasma and also on public health. Thank you so much for your session, ma'am. And I would also like to thank the organizers for having such a wonderful session with Dr. Ruby Sai, and I feel privileged to be a part of this webinar. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, the moderator and our eminent speaker, for such a wonderful and edifying speech and summation. Now, moving on to our second session of the day, we have amongst us a very eminent speaker, Dr. Soumitra Basu, and our very eminent moderator, Dr. Arpita Basu. Dr. Arpita Basu is the treasurer of the collaborating institution, Kolkata Society for Asian Studies, and the Tagore National Scholar of Anthropological Survey of India. Ma'am, I shall request you to kindly introduce Sir and take over the session. Thank you. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Sumanta. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. Now, we are at the second session of the third day of three-day international webinar on spiritual well-being and stress management, a religio-psychological perspective organized by Bhaktivedanta Research Center in collaboration with Kolkata Society for Asian Studies. We have already heard about Dr. Ruby Sai's opinion on public health and religion in the context of COVID-19 pandemic. Now we are very pleased to welcome Dr. Soumitra Basu, MD DPM, our consultant psychiatrist from Kolkata, who is the presenter of this session. Dr. Soumitra Basu used to divide his professional time between Kolkata and Puducherry. He has been working to develop consciousness paradigms in health and psychology from Sri Aurobindo's perspective. He is one of the editors of the Journal of Integral Health, NAMA. He is one of the founder directors of Sri Aurobindo International Institute of Integral Health and Research at Puducherry, director of the Institute of Integral Yoga Psychology, Aurashakti Foundation, and honorary secretary of Meera Vision Trust, a public charitable trust dedicated to Sri Aurobindo's vision. He has been serially presenting chapter-wise discourses on the life divine and the ideal of human unity from the psychological perspective. He has been exhaustively working on the psychological insights in integral yoga on a long-term research project initiated by Dr. A.S. Dalal at present, together with Dr. Michael Mavick of USA, and has been constructing a module of consciousness-based psychology. He conducts workshops on consciousness models of psychological growth and stress management in both academic and corporate sectors. He is a senior faculty in social work at Vidyasagar University, West Bengal, India, and extramural faculty in Indian psychology at University of Calcutta. He has authored numerous articles on the psychological, psychopathological, and social perspectives related to Sri Aurobindo's thought, and his books include Integral Health, Integral Education, The Caste System of India, and Aurobindonian Perspective, Sri Aurobindo's Political Life in Bengali, and Consciousness-Based Psychology, co-authored by Dr. Michael Mavick, which is in press now. And today he will be sharing with us his opinion on stress, a consciousness paradigm. The burden of the subconscious and the terrestrial unconscious necessitates that the stress reaction be approached from a consciousness paradigm that includes and surpasses Benson's relaxation response. A mere physiological beneficial state as provided by Benson's relaxation, relaxation techniques would have limited value unless supplemented with a widening and heightening of consciousness. So, no more introduction. If you have any question about this particular topic or anything else about his presentation, leave your question in the chat box. Those who are viewing us at YouTube platform are kindly requested to leave their comments in the comment box. With that, I ask that you give your full attention to Dr. Basu and help me in welcoming him to this platform. Kindly welcome Dr. Soumitra Basu. Dr. Basu.
Thank you. I'm audible, huh? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So, thank you all for inviting me, and especially to Dr. Arpita Basu for this introduction. So, I'll be speaking on stress, and today's stress is a problem, but actually, stress was a mechanism that was instituted in our constitution for our own protection. So at first it had nothing what you call maladaptive about it. It was a adaptive mechanism. You just imagine that when we were hunter or gatherers, our life at that when civilization had just began, or civilization was not there and the way in which we know it. So at that phase, if I am standing casually and enjoying a scenery, and if a lion comes and growls, then I cannot stand like that, in a casual state. What can I do? I have to run. I have to run for my life, because the lion will be chasing me. And if I do not run for my life, the lion will be eat me up. So to run for my life, my system will support me. So I need more blood into my system. So my heart rate will increase. My blood pressure will increase. I need more energy. So there will be more sugar breakdown in my body. The forest is dark with big trees. So there is darkness all around. So I need more light because I want to have an escape route. So my pupils will dilate so that I can have more light. If I have an urge for number one and number two, that will be suppressed. My muscles cannot be limpid and placid and loose. They have to be what you call in a state of contraction which will support me. So they just cannot be limp. At the same time, my mind has to be extremely alert, extremely sensitive, because I'm looking for an escape route. So whole system is actually geared up so that I can run, and I can save myself from the lion's grasp. Now what happens? There were two eventualities. Either the lion will eat me up, or I will come out of the lion's grasp. There are only two eventualities that can happen at that stage. If I am successful in coming out of the lion's grasp, I have found an escape route. Somehow I have found an escape route. I have climbed a tree, or I have got some other access, and then I am sure that the lion is no more chasing me. I am free now from its terror. Then what will happen? My body will come back to my status quo. So my blood pressure will come down to normal, my pulse rate will come down to normal, my sugar will come down, blood sugar level will come down to normal, my panting, I was panting, it will come down to normal. What will happen? My whole system will become in a relaxed state. In a way, my system will become such that it is conducive for growth anabolism to take place. While all the time that I was running, it was catabolism, the body was breaking. Now, so this phase we also know that this is caused by hormones. There's a different sets of hormones in which I'm not going into it. I'm just talking about the principle. There's a set of hormones which is causing that reaction, that catabolic reaction when I was running for saving my life, and there was a different set of hormones that have been activated so that now that I can come back to my status quo. So that is in medical terms we call that the body has come to a relaxed state. Now, what has happened in civilization, very interesting what has happened, that when after civilization developed, after many years, gradually what happened is that the lion has been replaced by something else. So there was the physical stressor, the thing that is causing the stress, that is called stressor. So that was the physical stressor, the lion. And now it has been replaced by a psychosocial stressor. So the stress producing agents today is not the physical lion who is going to eat me up. It's something different. It might be a court case that is going on for years. It might be unemployment. It might be uncertainty. I might be sacked from my job. It might be a family dispute, a marital discord. It might be a divorce affair that has been running for long. It might be that I have got problems with my one of the members in my family who is a chronic drug addict, or there is a chronic schizophrenic patient in my family and I do not have the means of maintaining him for such a long time. All so many other things which are either psychological or social or psychosocial in character. So the stressor has now changed from the physical stressor like the lion to a psychosocial stressor. But the catch is that our body reacts. Our body reacts to the psychosocial stressor in the same way as it reacted to the physical stressor. You see, the body reacts in the same way as it reacted to the lion when it came to me. And today when I have court cases, when I have other things, the body is reacting in the same way with high, so that and the other interesting thing is that at that time, there were only two alternatives. Either the lion will eat me up or I will get out of the lion's grasp. But today, the stressor, the psychosocial stressor, it goes on and on. So the court case goes on and on. The risk of unemployment is always there. I have to pay loans. I have to pay loans for a long time. For so many years, 20 years, I have to pay loans, and I'm worried that how will I pay the loans. So you see, for a long time, the stressor is continuing its action. It's not like the previous time when it was either I will die or I will survive. It's not like that. I am also surviving, but the stressor is also surviving, going for years and years. So what has happened today, that I fall back to stress. I have high blood pressure. I have high blood sugar. All the other things. I have my muscles are always tense, and because the muscles are around the joints are also getting affected. They are getting inflamed, and I have got so many arthritic problems, joint stiffness, all sorts of plethora of problems. So from starting from headache to our systemic changes, our metabolic changes, so many things are happening one after another, because only the stressor has changed to a psychosocial stressor, and my body is reacting in the same way as it reacted to the physical stressor. So then what happened? What to do? How to combat this? So this was one of the first very innovative ways in which this was sought out, was by Herbert Benson, who was inspired by our yoga. Actually, he was inspired by your yogic techniques, because yoga at that time in USA in 1950s, 60s, it began to show that things which we considered to be not under our control could be controlled. Like yoga showed that you could control your heart rate. Now, previously we thought that it was an involuntary thing. Controlling the heart rate was not possible. But people practicing Hatha yoga showed that you could control many of the things which so long were considered to be involuntary. You could voluntarily control them. And this gave the idea to Herbert Benson to have this relaxation response, to design this relaxation response, which was, you see, that periods of rest, of anabolic activity, which I told in the beginning, which followed the catabolic activity when the lion was chasing me, and that was followed by an anabolic period when I got rest and all my systems were restored to the status quo. So Benson had devised exercises so that we can voluntarily, we can bring in that phase of status quo, or that phase of deep relaxation or the deep rest. Anytime we can do that, so that our system doesn't react in the same way as it reacts to stress, but it reacts in the way in which it takes rest when the stress is not there. So this is the relaxation response. Benson's relaxation doesn't mean that you relax in front of a fireplace with a cup of coffee or a mug of beer. It means that your body has been kept in a state where the organs are at rest, and because they are at rest, they are now ready for constructive activities. They're ready for anabolic activities, and they are at rest because I have brought down that system inside me. I voluntarily have induced that consciousness inside me so that I can have a rest. So that was his relaxation response, which again has been taken from our Indian techniques, especially the Hatha Yoga techniques of Savasana and Savasana type of techniques. He has taken it from there. So it is also our pristine and our traditional Indian yoga which gave him this idea, and then he became very famous. And then there were many types of relaxation that have been devised in the world, and they are used all over the world for greater purpose, and it has been very nicely used. It is being very nicely used. Then there are instruments like biofeedback machines where you can also measure your physiological activities, and then you can relax in such a way that you can actually measure that how much you are being able to relax physiologically. So that state of relaxation, when your organs are in a state where they are at deep rest, that is very conducive to counter stress, because that is something which happens when that stressor is not there. So you are voluntarily bringing in that, and at any time you can do this relaxation. And the more and more you practice this, the more and more, when you are combated with stressor, your system will not react. You will not have high blood pressure, high pulse, all these things will not come. Your system will know that it can react in peace, in what you call in a poise of rest, in a poise of relaxation. Now, so far this is good. It has worked up to a certain extent. My problem is that I had a problem when I started working, and then because I wanted to work with spirituality and consciousness, and my problem was that because a thief came to me and told me, teach me to relax because I'm so stressed, because stealing nowadays is a very problematic thing. People are very high alert, and there are precision instruments that can catch my stealing. And then there was, after some time, then somebody came, and he was a swindler in the stock market, and he said that you teach me to relax because otherwise I can't do my manipulations in the stock market because I'm so stressed. And then I was very confused that what I'm teaching relaxation to people so that one can become a better thief, one can become a better swindler at the stock market because they're relaxed. They can do all their nefarious activities in a relaxed state without any stress. So I asked the grocer, I asked my philosopher friend, actually asked my philosopher friend what to do. And my philosopher friend told me that, you see, a grocer doesn't differentiate between clients. So you are like a grocer, a psychotherapist. So you should teach relaxation whoever wants. So then I asked my grocer, in my next door grocer, that do you understand which client is of what personality? How is he? And the grocer told me, oh yes, I understand psychology better than you. We understand people. There are people who don't pay money, people who are always trying to cheat, people who are always showing off, but buy the cheapest things in the market. We know them better. So we also differentiate between clients. So then I thought that this technique of teaching relaxation has little value unless it is supplemented by something else. That we have to do something so that the consciousness gets widened. Because the problem was with me. I wanted to do a spiritually based counseling. So I was not satisfied with only teaching relaxation. For you have to go beyond. You have to do something so that the consciousness can be deepened, the consciousness can be increased. You can rise in consciousness. You can around your consciousness, you can widen yourself, and all these movements also are necessary. And then I found that one of the most difficult things why all these things were happening is because at the time when the lion was chasing me, and at the dawn of the human life, at that time, life was very simple. Life was actually very simple. And the moment I came out from the lion's grasp, the harmony was restored. But now it is not so easy. Why? Because life has become very, very complicated. The mind has become very, very complicated for thousands and thousands and thousands of years after civilization progressed. Because the more the civilization progresses, the what you call the content of our subconscious, the content of our inconscious goes on increasing and increasing. So all the things that come inside our head, all of our complexities, all our problems, all our faults, we push them where? We push them into our subconscious, which Freud called the unconscious. And from the unconscious, they go further down, which Freud didn't have an idea of what was it. It was known in the Indian tradition. It was the inconscience, the nishchetana, the inconscience, and deep down into the inconscience. And the inconscience is no longer personal. When you go deep down into the inconscious, you go to the terrestrial inconscious. As when you go very high above in consciousness, you go to the superconscious. Then you widen yourself to the cosmic consciousness and go beyond, even to the transcendental state. So below also, when you go down, you are no longer personal. You are merging with yourself with the terrestrial inconscious that contains the mud of the whole world. So you are connected with the mud of the whole world, and that has been for many years and years. It has been running like that. So you are burdened with the subconscious, you are burdened with the unconscious, and because of the unconscious is also containing the collective suggestions. There are defeatist suggestions. Defeating. You see that we are talking about this pandemic. See, this pandemic, we have a fear of death, and the fear of death is a collective suggestion. That is why it imposes on us so strongly. You see that we don't take death in a natural way as we take birth, but actually death and birth are similar natural incidents in life. If birth can be taken naturally, death should also be taken naturally. We can't take it because death has been put into that position where we are detesting it, we are avoiding it, we are afraid of it because of collective suggestions which have been accumulated in the collective unconscious for years and years and years. So to fight all these things, you have to have a different strategy. You have to work at the level of consciousness. So that is how we develop this module. That now this time is very short. I will give a very short inkling of what are the things that we do. What we try to do is that behind the surface personality, behind the surface being, which is called the personality in psychology, that is also an inner being, which Sri Aurobindo has described as an inner or subliminal being, which is behind our outer surface personality. That is an inner being. And behind that inner being is the inmost being, which is the soul principle. Now the inner being is also connected with the cosmic consciousness. So if you go to the inner being, there is an inner mind, there is an inner physical, and there is an inner vital, which contains your energy. Now the trick is that you have to learn to go to the inner being. In the inner being, the dimensions, the perspectives of things that you see in life are changed. For example, when you see that perception of time changes, you see one of the main reasons is of falling to stress-related disorders in modern life, especially in corporate life, is because we are always competing with time. Competing with time, which is so funny, because in the inner being, there is the dimension of timelessness, which is supporting the outward time. You see, time is projected by Mahakal. Time is projected by the gaze. What do you call? In Germany it's called the Zeitgeist. So it is the time spirit or the Mahakal. And competing with that Mahakal is so funny because we will always be defeated. And actually that happens. You see the type A personality, people who fall to prey to stress-linked diseases in corporate life, they get ischemic heart disease 10 years before the ordinary population. And one of the interesting thing is in their personality is they have a very high sense of time urgency. Time urgency is there. I have to complete this time, this work within this deadline. This thing has to be completed within that deadline. So always I am moving along with time and deadlines. Now when you go to the inner being, you are linked with timelessness. So you have to bring that poise of peace and silence, stability, and that timelessness. You have to cultivate that inner being. And if you cultivate that, then in the outer being, you can play with time. And in the outer being, you can make friends with time. You see, if you can go to this poise inside, in the outer being, you can also be a friend with time, which will actually save you. And then that is an inner physical. That is an inner physical also, subtle physical. Inner physical word is in English, it doesn't sound good, so when they use the word subtle physical, where there is a consciousness of the body that can be awakened. Usually we are not aware of that consciousness of the body because we don't have that faith in the body which an infant has. You see, when an infant who has started to crawl falls down, the mother comes and rebukes the floor. Mother actually stamps the floor and says, "Pup, the floor is at fault. Nothing has happened to the child." And the child believes, the infant believes that the floor is at fault, and the infant doesn't get hurt. You see, the mother's suggestion that it is not the child, but the floor is at fault, was taken up by the body, the consciousness of the infant's body. Now, when we grow up, we lose that faith. The body loses that faith. Now, afterwards, by a yoga and then by a consciousness, a technology of consciousness, you can bring back that consciousness of the body. And not only you can bring back, if you can do it correctly, you can increase the will of the body, so that the body will not only it will act independent of the will, it can act directly according to your will, and it can act also independent of your will. So very fine, it can happen. It can happen. People who are very good pianists, who are playing the piano in a very refined way, the hands can go on playing the piano, but the mind can go on calculating arithmetic. So like that, body consciousness can be developed in a very subtle way. More and more you develop the body consciousness, you are preparing the body to respond to stress in a different way. Same, although also inner vital, the place where you have your energies. We are talking about time. There are other things there. There's an energy inside the inner being, which is not constrained as in the outer body. You see, in our surface personality, we have a lot of energy, but that energy we cannot use because that energy is constrained. But in the inner being, that constraint is not there. That energy is available for more work. And then if you go to the inner mind, then you can get over that ruminating thoughts, which are always defeating thoughts. Always you have doubts, because people pray, but prayers are most of the time people actually pray, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work necessarily, because at the outer mind is full of doubts. The mind's work is to doubt, which is legitimate. If the mind didn't doubt, we would have been prey to superstitions. We would have become unscientific. But because the mind's work is to doubt, if you want to have a strong faith there, you will not be able to do it. So you have to go to the inner mind, where you have to cultivate faith in a different footing, in a different kind of consciousness. You have to cultivate the faith where the doubt is not there. So there is an inner mind where you can work also. So our time is again less constrained, so I'm not going into details. But then there is another very important thing, that in our surface personality, another great reason why we fall to stress, even one part of our being might be strong. It might want to face stress, but there is no harmony inside our outer personality. In our outer personality, you see, the mind might want today that I will be very strong today, I will read Bhagavad Gita, I will today pray all the time, I will not fall to any trap of stress. But the body might come with a headache, or emotions might come and tell, go and enjoy a cinema. You see, all the time we are having a disharmony in our outer being, because the outer being is mediated by the ego. So the main thing is, the mediating principle of our outer personality, which is the ego, has to be replaced by a different principle, which Sri Aurobindo calls the fourth dimensional ego surpassing principle. That's the principle of the soul principle, which is deep behind the inner being. If you go there, then you can actually coordinate the different parts of your being which are in disharmony, and you can bring harmony into the system. So that's deep inside is there, which is the Chaitya Purush. Sri Aurobindo calls it also the psychic being, which is a projection of the Jivatma, which is there. And around it, if you organize your whole system, then you can have an integrating effect on your personality. And with this integrated personality, you are now ready to climb the hierarchies of consciousness. You can climb up, and you can be above the the humdrum of stress that is acting there. You see, you have to rise in consciousness a little above the poise where you are now sustaining yourself. It's like this, like the road in front of your house looks like, you see the road in front of your house. It looks like the road that you see. But if you see the same road from the roof of a 10-story building, the road will look different. And if you look at the same road from the top of a mountain, the road will look again completely different. And from a helicopter again, the road will be totally different. You see, the same road is there, but your vision is changing according to your placement, your poise. In your poise in your physical space. Same time, if you can also change your poise in consciousness, the things that cause the stress are there, but you are looking it from a higher perspective, from a higher denouement, and then the equations change, the things change. All these things that were of value, there was certain value at the lower level, they have a different value at the higher level. So you see, we are in a constantly changing world. If you take this agenda of changing in consciousness, of progressing in consciousness, then all the things around us will also change. So that is also what you call a secret of Indian spirituality, that more and more you go deep and deep and deep inside you, things around you are going to change. Things around you are not going to remain the same. That means the things will present in a different way. That doesn't mean that a cat will become a dog. It's not like that. But the things around you, they will also start changing. Their values will start to change, and you will be looking at them, seeing them from a different angle, from a different perspective. So you see, stress, which had an adaptive value in present times, because it was it was it was I'm sorry, time is also coming to an end. But stress, which had an adaptive value, has become maladaptive in present times, because with change of civilization, with change of culture, things have changed. So now we have to learn new ways, completely new techniques of coping up with stress. And this consciousness perspective gives a very new kind of approach, and which is something which everybody can open up to it. Whether one believes in God or not doesn't matter. I have seen that it is something which is based on deep spirituality. Consciousness is something which comes from the spiritual perspective. At the same time, it is something where it can be acceptable to all. It's such a very beautiful thing. And let us see that stress, how we can combat and how we can see it from the consciousness perspective. It will be a very enriching experience if we try to do it. I think my time is up. I will leave it to Dr. Arpita Basu for the rest.
Thank you, Dr. Soumitra Basu. Now we will take the questions. Shantanu De has asked a question here. Do you consider a subtle distinction exists between religious faith in a god or prayers and meditative consciousness building activities of accessing the inner mind? From Dr. Shantanu De.
See, it depends upon from what level of consciousness you are working. Prayer also can be very effective, but it has to be done. If you do it from the outer mind, then its value is little. But if you do it from a meditative posture, or if you go deep inside, I always tell people, because in these corona times, I had to always tell people, because people are very scared, and I tell them that if you pray, you have to pray, go deep inside yourself, where you have your Ishtadevata. You have to station your consciousness there, which is the place where people who do meditation, they concentrate, and then only you can have a solidity in your faith, and your prayer will have value. Or if you want to do it from the mind, then you have to do it in a different way. You have to strengthen your will by working at the chakra between your eyebrows, or then you have to go above your head, which is Shiva suprarational mind. So all these things are related to deep spiritual things. So unless that is a mark of spiritual opening and going inside, the prayers are not going to be that effective in a way that is done. Of course, divine grace is there. So even if you do go inside or outside, doesn't matter. The divine grace can overrule everything and give an answer to anybody's prayer, which is outside our purview.
So, in a nutshell, we can say that the burden of the subconscious and terrestrial inconscious necessitates that the stress reaction be approached from a consciousness paradigm that includes and surpasses Benson's relaxation response. A mere physiological beneficial state, as provided by Benson's relaxation techniques, would have limited value unless supplemented with a widening and heightening of consciousness. To effectuate a whole person health, one needs to work not only at the surface personality, but also in the inner range of the being and harmonize the divergent strands of consciousness around an ego surpassing four-dimensional soul principle. So thank you, Dr. Soumitra Basu, for your presence and insights. Lastly, I would like to thank the organizer to give me the opportunity to be a part of this extremely productive discussion. Now over to Shrimanti Ghoshal.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir, for such an enlightening session. I would now move on to the third session of the day. Today, in the third session, we have amongst us a very eminent speaker, Dr. Prathama Chaudhuri, and our very eminent moderator for the session is Dr. Sumanta Rudra. He is the Dean of the organizing institution, Bhaktivedanta Research Center. Now, I shall request Sir to kindly introduce our eminent speaker and take over the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Shrimanti. On behalf of Bhaktivedanta Research Center and Kolkata Center for Asian Studies, I take this opportunity to extend a very warm welcome to Dr. Prathama Chaudhuri to the final session of our the 3-day webinar. I would also like to thank the organizing team for conducting the wonderful seminar and all our esteemed speaker and audiences. I take this opportunity now to introduce Dr. Prathama Chaudhuri. She's an MBBS, MD, DNB, alumni of Calcutta Medical College Central Institute of Psychiatry, WHO Fellowship from New South Wales Institute of Psychiatry, Sydney. Special interests include mindfulness-based psychotherapy from Netherlands, Professor of Psychiatry, West Bengal Medical Education Services, consultant psychiatrist attached to Fortis and AMRI Hospital, Kolkata. She also has her own clinics in the city. Her YouTube channel is Here and Now, Dr. Prathama Chaudhuri. Thank you, Dr. Prathama Chaudhuri, for coming to this conference. May I now request you to kindly deliver your keynote address. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your kind introduction, and a very good evening to everyone. I must thank the organizers of BRC for giving me this opportunity to share my views and ideas about what we now call positive psychology. Without much ado, I will go straight into my presentation. So the slides are visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
They are visible.
Right. So now I'll be talking about something known as the new psychiatry. I thought I'll call it the new psychiatry, where we look beyond what is just mental illness. There used to be a conception that psychiatry is mainly about treating mental illnesses, like, let's say, depression or schizophrenia or things like that. But just a second. But nowadays, we also think of there are two ways. Psychiatry is not just about treating mental illnesses, but there are two pillars of psychiatry. One of them being what we call, of course, we are still here to treat people with mental illnesses. That is definitely there. But in addition, the second pillar of psychiatry is known as what is known as promotion of positive mental health. So according to the World Health Organization, nowadays, a state of physical, mental, and spiritual. The spiritual dimension has been added by the World Health Organization on the basis of research, field research. We have found that in order to be well and healthy, we need physical health, we need mental health, and we also need spiritual health. So in order to promote positive mental health, that is a second pillar of psychiatry, which we psychiatrists are dealing with today. So we are not just, I keep telling my students and everyone else that we are not here just to treat the diseased or the distressed, but we go beyond that. So-called quote unquote normal people, how to promote positive mental health in them. Next slide, please. Okay. As far as treatment, we have come a long way. If you have a look at this slide, at the Left side, there is the picture of Bedlam, the infamous mental asylum, which was there in the 17th century England, and where people were just tied up and there was no specific treatment at all. And then a humanitarian approach. The second part, on the right side of the slide, you can see Philip Pinel, who was famous for unchaining the insane. He had, at that time in France, just as in England, the insane used to be chained inside mental asylums. But Philip Pinel was the first one who allowed unchaining. He took away their chains. But that was how treatment was going on. That was the beginning. Even today, if you many of you will remember the Eravadi tragedy, where many people inside a mental asylum, even today, people sometimes are incarcerated inside mental asylums, but we have moved a long way from the past. The next one. From the times of the bedlam or mental asylums where people were in chains and no specific treatment was available, we have now moved on to chamber. We have now moved on to psychotherapy. We have got excellent medications today. And to support us with our medicines, we have got what we call psychotherapy. So we are trying to, as you can see in this slide, we are trying to unwind the knots that are inside people's brain and make some sense of all this nonsense and mayhem. So that is a long way. We must, we have to, there is, an opportunity to tell ourselves that we have moved a long way. But still, there are certain things that, like I just now said, that beyond treating mental people, we have to now, we have to go one step forward where we are trying to promote the best possible state of mental well-being, which also includes a spiritual well-being. Can I have the next slide, please? The second pillar, as I just now said, is what we call positive psychology. Psychiatrists are here not just to mend broken hearts or heal diseased minds. We are there, of course, but we are also here to promote mental well-being. What is it? That is to make you discover happiness, nurture your potential and creativity, and help you live in peace with others. Mark my words. One is discover happiness. It is not just a life of mundane existence. You just somehow gobble something for breakfast, run for office, come back, go to sleep, then the next day eat, sleep, repeat. That it's not that. Beyond that, should we not discover happiness? Yes, whatever inner potential we have, that's very important. All of us have got some creativity inside it. It could be a big C, like the groundbreaking discoveries that occur, or it could be a small C. For example, just a small creativity at your home, trying to do something with how your drawing room is there, or some small thing, the way you teach your children, some dab of creativity there. So nurture your own potential and creativity, and not just yourself. You have to look beyond yourself. We want to teach you how to live in peace and harmony with others. That is extremely important, as you can see in the time of this testing, the pandemic times that we are going through. Unless we learn to live in peace with others, unless we learn to communicate, we are nowhere. This virus has taught us this thing in a very hard way. So you can't live all by yourself. The next one, please. I'll just mention Abraham Maslow. Most of you know him. He was a humanist and a psychologist. He had said that we need a hierarchy of needs. First of all, we have our needs for physiological comforts, like we need food, we need good sleep, we need to have the basic things to survive is this. But once our need for sleep and food and thirst are met up, we are not satisfied. We move on to some more needs, like the needs for safety. It could mean a house, a roof under which we stay. It could also mean security. It could mean financial or social security as well. Once those things are fulfilled, then we move on further up the pyramid and we start looking for love and belongingness. Remember, if your basic needs are not fulfilled, for example, if you are hungry day after day, you will probably not even love the we have seen instances where even a mother forgets to love her child when she is starving for days on end. So it's like a hierarchy. Initial the physiological needs, then comes the safety needs, and once the safety needs are fulfilled, we go for love and belongingness. After that, once we have a house, a home to stay in, we know that we have enough to eat, we have enough to sleep, we also have somebody to love us. It could be our family, it could be our friends. Then we move on to the next part, where we look forward to building up our self-esteem. So that is something Maslow said, that it is not just having a loving family, a good house, and food to eat, not that, because we are human beings. God has given us this specific attribute as human beings. So we move on from one need to the other and to the other. As you can see in the next part of the pyramid are the needs for self-esteem. What am I doing to this world? That is very important. That gives me self esteem. Am I helping others a little bit? Am I being an honest person? That gives me what we call self esteem. And finally, at the top of the pyramid is what he famously called self actualization, which basically means whatever potential is there inside me, I must be able to realize it. Human life is so rare. We go this way but once. So, in this small span of a human life, we need to actualize, we need to realize the hidden potentials inside us. That is extremely important. Having said that, we'll move on to the next slide. Can I have the next one? Okay. So now we move on to what is now, we'll stay at the top of the pyramid, how to promote self actualization and self esteem. Let us look at some of the positive emotions. Some of the positive emotions we all know, as you can see, it could be the emotion of joy, it could be the emotion of getting something known as gratitude. Remember one thing, that gratitude makes the person who gives you happy. It's like the quality of mercy. As famously, that Portia's famous speech, that when you give something, you are happy, and the person who receives this is also happy. So it's a two-way thing, this gratitude. And finally, of course, serenity. So these are some of the positive emotions. In the next slide, we'll see some more positive emotions. The next. Some more positive emotions are inspiration, interest, amusement, hope, pride, love, and awe. Sometimes we are in awe with the beauty of nature or something like that. So these are some of the positive emotions. There could be more, but a latest study actually it lists some of the most important positive emotions. And of course, like I said, there could be more. What is the importance to inculcate and experience the positive emotions? Let's see. The next slide. Why do we need to be happy? We need to be serene. Why is it so very important? Because there are actual practical advantages of being happy. We have seen people who are happy, that is, they're high in their well-being, the sense of well-being, as we call it, SWB. They tend to live longer. If you control for all other factors, hard scientific research has shown that people who are high on the happiness quotient tend to live longer, they live healthier, they have fewer colds and other illnesses, which basically means their immunity is better. We are talking so much about immunity in these times. So if you can inculcate positive emotions, it doesn't happen in a day, but if it remains within you for a long time, your immunity gets better. And therefore, you recover faster when you are sick. You make more friends, you get, it seems, higher pay at work and better satisfaction with work, higher quality of relationships, and you can overcome challenges more easily. Also, the last line is very important. Happiness is a process, not an end goal. You just can't say, if I get this, I'll be happy. No, our search for happiness will remain, and we will evolve throughout our life looking for happiness, experiencing happiness. And like I said, as a doctor, I can tell you, being happy is not just a wishy-washy thing. It actually makes us more immune to the challenges of life. The next one. How does this occur? It's like I said, this is not just wishy-washy thinking. If you have the positive emotions in you and you have tried, and another thing I want to tell you, it is not that you are born to be happy. Some people are born to be happy, but some people are not. But even those people can be taught to inculcate the feelings of happiness, joy, inspiration, serenity, and so on and so forth. And that is the job of us mental health professionals, promote those positive emotions in you. What basically happens, when there is a stress in your body, immediately there is a release of cytokines and certain stress hormones like cortisol. Many of us now know that people are dying due to COVID infection because of what we call a cytokine storm. There is an upheaval within the immune system. So, if your immune system is strong, then you might actually abort the virus in the first stage itself. And then probably we will not go for an aberrant immune response and a cytokine storm. Anyways, when there is a stressor, it affects the immune system. It also affects the hormonal or the endocrine system. The glands, thyroid, adrenaline, and the gonadal glands are stimulated to secrete different neurotransmitters and hormones. And all of them together affect the nervous system or our brain. So, when there is a stressor in our body or any kind of stress, it could be a chronic stress, it could be an acute stress, it just does not happen inside our mind. It doesn't even affect only our brain, it affects our entire body. The whole endocrine system, the immune system, and the nervous system is affected. So, if we can keep a steady level of positive emotions in ourselves, then probably, not probably, it has been proved that our immune system remains stronger and our endocrine system stops releasing the stress hormones like cortisol or excessive level of noradrenaline. Instead, the brain starts releasing the so-called happy chemicals like endorphin and others. So that's the science behind, happiness, that's making us healthier and making us live longer. Let's go to the next slide. Is it, like I said, some people are born to be happy. In fact, according to twin studies, we have seen positive affect or positive emotion is heritable. Part of it is influenced by genetics. Then comes the question, so if I do not have the gene of happiness, am I doomed forever? No, not at all. About 50% of your positive effect may be heritable. Only 10% is situational. That means you become happy only. Many people have told me, what is there to be happy about? My situation is so bad. People are not doing well. I have not got a promotion. I have failed in an exam. How can I be happy, doctor? I tell them only 10% of positive affect or positive emotion is situational. 50% are what you are born with, but another 40% is entirely within your choice and control. This is what we can focus on. We cannot control our genes. We cannot control the situations, not all of the time. But what we can do is this 40%, which is under our control, we can focus on this part. How to develop the ability to remain happy, at least composed in the face of adversity. The next slide. Like right at the beginning, I said, it is not just developing your own self-esteem. It is not just becoming happy yourself. You must also look around the world yourself. You must also look around the world around you. So the ability to connect and build positive relationships also does wonders to our brain and the rest of our body. Who do you have good relationships with and what makes them positive? These are some of the existential questions that we often ask ourselves. And once we know the answers to these questions, we become stronger and happier individuals. The next one. Happy people tend to have more friends. They're more likely to be married or have happier relationships. You can't do without social relationships. This is something like I said. Like, for example, you may put a mask on or a shield on, but if your neighbor is not doing the same, then it's not 100% effective. So take unless you really care about the person who's around you. So somebody was telling me, my domestic help comes, I'm not giving her a mask because if she falls ill, it's not her fault. She falls ill. How does it affect me? I told her that this is a big mistake. At least try to understand, look at it scientifically. If somebody near you has the infection, you will acquire it anytime. So this is, like I said, ki once for all, we have learned the hard way that we cannot be happy all by ourselves. We need to have good connections around us, and we need to have happy people around us. Satisfaction with marriage spikes and then returns to a baseline. And we have seen that when spouse or when we are in a long term relationship, it could be our spouse, it could be our parents, it could be anyone, a very good friend also, not even family, then we often show a steep decline in life satisfaction, and it takes a long time to recover. So the more friends you have, the less likely you are to get into depression. That is, it might sound as an oversimplification, but definitely having good supportive relationships are a protective factor against depression, anxiety, and other mental illnesses. The next slide, please. So, like this is a continuation, other people matter. And as famously George Valiant had said, love, full stop. We need to love ourselves and we need to love people around us. Next one, please. All this is very good, but now, like a situation like now, when the going gets tough, what it is now today, as you can see, the situation is bad. How to handle it? Today it's like this. It was this, but this is not the first pandemic. This is not the first crisis that human civilization is facing. We have faced similar crises before, and we have successfully emerged. Like, let's go to the next slide. The next one. See, this is an example. I'll tell you why I thought I'll show you this slide. As you can see on the left side of the slide, this is a picture of a famous psychiatrist. His name was Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was a young man in his 30s. He had just got married. He was practicing in Vienna. Life was all rosy when all hell broke loose. He was a Jew, and he did not have enough money to run away from Vienna, from Austria at that point of time. And so he was sent along with his whole family to various concentration camps across Austria. And in these concentration camps, Frankel lost his parents, both of them, his sister, and his wife. So, what could he do? The situation was like this. Frankel could have died, he could have sunk into depression, but no. From this adversity, in the midst of this adversity, Viktor Frankl found out he was actually taking notes every day in the concentration camp. And finally, when the World War was over and he had lost everyone he loved, he still did not lose himself. What he came out is what we see in the next slide. The next one. He wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. He taught us basically that when everything appears so desolate, you might as well think, why do I live? I have lost everyone I loved. All my loved ones are gone. Then why should I live? What is the meaning of my existence? Then he said that in those tough and trying times, you should tell yourself, maybe I have nothing to get from life, but life has a lot to demand from me. So that attitude, the way you look at it, he said that maybe, like I said, maybe I don't have much to expect from life anymore. But if I live for 10 years more, maybe I can teach some children. Maybe I can form a theory which will later come to be of help. So life has demands from me. It's not just a one-way traffic. I'm just giving an excerpt. He wrote, we who lived in concentration camps can remember the men who walked through the huts comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken away from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. So that's what he said. Situation may be dark, it's all dark, the clouds are hovering around you, but the last freedom that you have, no one can take it. No concentration camp can take it. As long as you are breathing, you can have a command over, you can choose how to look at life. So that is why Viktor Frankl had started this form of therapy, psychotherapy, known as logotherapy, where man could search for his meaning in life and change his attitude towards adversity, which would help him to survive better. The next slide. So this is known as meaning or purpose in life. What do you contribute to the world? And what is your meaning or purpose? That if you have a clear notion about yourself, that this is what I mean to contribute to the world around me, then you, even if nothing is there around you, everything appears dark, you still have a meaning to struggle on, to move on, and to survive. The next one. The next slide. So in these people nowadays, from we have moved, we are now in the next century from Viktor Frankl, and we are now talking of post-traumatic growth, not just post-traumatic stress disorder. In times of severe stress, I have actually seen patients who have been admitted in the ICU for 20 days or so, and they were very close to death, and they have come up with symptoms of what we call post-traumatic stress disorder. They can't sleep, they're having nightmares, they're having kind of jerky movements, and sometimes they're emotionally numb. Then I'm trying to tell them that from post-traumatic stress disorder we can move on to what is known as post-traumatic growth. So when you face trauma, once you come face to face with yourself, your own self, maybe your own God, and then you find out the meaning of life. That is the time our belief in spirituality, I'm not talking of any religion, the belief in spirituality, the belief in self, we look at ourselves in the mirror and we discover who we are. What are we here for? So there sometimes trauma can lead to post-traumatic growth. We emerge stronger after a trauma. The next one. There are some character strengths that we can build up in order to develop post-traumatic, growth. What are those? Look at yourself. What are your character strengths? Things that you are good at. Many people tell me I'm not good at anything. Then I say, see what are the things that you enjoy doing. You may not be good at it, but at least you enjoy the things. Ask yourself, what are the things that are beneficial to others? Repeatedly through our presentation, this term others will come back. You have to look at things that are beneficial for others, what I can do. Inspire other people when they see you doing them. That's very important. Sometimes we live in a very cynical society. And when one person does one good deed, then the others often follow. So you have to be the first person. Maybe initially people will say you are stupid, you are a fool, but then later on when they realize that you have given so much happiness and you appear to be happier, they will follow. We must also try to provide potential sources of meaning to the people around us. Next one. The next slide. Yeah. Some of the character strengths could be creativity, curiosity, the ability to think critically, the love of learning. I was reading today that some people are lifelong learners. That's a very important quality you can have throughout your life. If you are ready to learn, that keeps you strong in the middle of a storm. Bravery, perseverance, spirituality, kindness, social intelligence, forgiveness, prudence, self-control, gratitude, hope. Hope is some, they say you can take away everything from a human being, but if you take away hope, then there's nothing left. Of course, there's love, a sense of humor, humility, and honesty. There could be more. There could be more. This is just a small list of some of the character strengths which we can develop, which we can learn to develop, and then that will make us stronger people, people with better positive mental health. The next slide. There's something, I'll just tell you, something known as resilience. I still remember a few years back, I had visited a government home. And in this government home, there are many girls. Most of them are naturally, they're going through very tough situation. They have probably lost their parents. They have no one to look after them. The home is not a wonderful place to live in, of course. And many of them, most of them are depressed. But in the middle of all this, I saw a 10-year-old girl. Her parents had, illegally migrated to India from Bangladesh, and she was trying to find, because her grandmother was not behaving nicely with her. So one day she also tried to cross the border, and then she fell in the wrong hands, landed up in one of those red light areas of Kolkata, and then she was rescued and brought to this home. She has lost her parents, she has lost her dreams, and yet I could see her, she was so happy. She was telling me, will I tell you a nice poem? Then, when I used to give Shinko, she used to give me small pictures, just pencil sketches, not beautiful ones, but something she was trying. So I was asking myself, this, slip of a girl, just 10 years old, what is it? What does she have in her that she can bounce back in the face of so much adversity? This is what we call resilience. Resilience is about how we bounce back from adversity, and it is much easier to do for optimistic thinker. I'll give you a quick example and then we'll move on. Something known as an ABCDE model. All I want to tell you, I have been telling you right from the beginning that we can actually learn to become positive. We can learn to become more resilient in life. I'll give you just one example of how we can change the way we look at things and accordingly become more resilient. This model is known as the ABCDE model, where A stands for adversity, B stands for your belief. What do you believe to be true about that adverse event? C is the consequence. The consequence of not only the event, but also your appraisal of the event. The way you look at an event often determines how you feel, what do you think, and what do you do as a result. Your emotion, your thoughts, and your behavior as a result of the appraisal that you have made of this particular event. Next slide. Supposing, I'll give you an example. Activating event, I applied for a job and I didn't get it. It's a bad thing to have happened to anyone. My belief, what do I believe about it? How do I appraise the situation? You can say that I'm no good at job interviews, so that gives rise to self-pity and depression. There was someone else who is better than me. This is more logical way to think, but it also can lead to depression that I'm no good. They had someone else in mind the whole time. So injustice has been meted out to me. When you think like that, then instead of feeling sad and down, you get angry. Anger is also another negative emotion. And again, you can think, I'm underqualified. You may even generalize to say that I have not qualified in this interview. Maybe I'll never get a job. As a result of this belief, you can have a myriad emotional or behavioral response. If you think I'm no good at job interviews, you feel bad, upset, and frustrated. You probably won't even apply for more jobs at that company. If you feel that the company is being partial, it is being unjust, then you get very angry and you will probably not even apply for any more jobs in that company. Or if you feel you are underqualified, you start applying for lower level jobs. No, I will not apply for a job of an officer. From next time onwards, I'll apply for the job of a group D employee or something like that, so that I will get the job and so I'll not feel so bad. Many people do this, they just bring down their ambition level just so that they don't feel bad about it anymore. Next slide. The next one. Then what should you do? You are feeling down in the dumps, you are feeling extremely angry. What should you do? Then comes D, which is known as disputation. How can you dispute or debate the beliefs that you have? Are you sure that these people had someone in mind and that's why they have unjustly refused you the job? Ask yourself some key questions. What evidence do we have? Often what we do is what we call jumping to conclusions. We just quickly jump to a conclusion and we imagine and we somehow feel that whatever has come to my mind first is the truth and I start believing in it without even looking for evidence. Ask yourself, make it a habit. What evidence do you have to the conclusion that you have made? Could there be some other alternatives? For example, maybe this particular job, I'm well qualified, but due to whatever reason they found, maybe I was overqualified for the job, or maybe they felt that they need someone closer home, somebody who stays nearer to the office. There could be 2, 3, 4, 5 other alternatives. Is there any other way of looking at it? Look at it, think about it with a cool head. Maybe not just now, maybe go back, sleep well, then tomorrow morning, think if there is any other way, alternative way of looking at it. What are the implications, even if your belief is correct? Suppose your belief is correct. You found out evidence that someone was there already on the backstage and this is just a farce, this interview, and they wanted to give him a job. Even if that is correct, does it really mean that all companies will always be that bad? Or this company, in the second job that you apply, maybe you apply for another job in the same company, and this time they may not have someone at the backstage, so they may take you. So what are the what is the implications, even if your belief is correct? And what is the usefulness of holding on to that belief? This is something I always tell my clients. Think about a cost benefit analysis. Even if you feel you are right, even if you feel that this has occurred because you are underqualified, what is the point brooding on it? Isn't it proving to be too costly? So if a particular belief is making you sad, you better abandon it. There's no point, clinging on to a belief that makes me sad or it makes me angry. Nothing is the absolute truth in this world. So why stick to something that's making me bad? Life is so short, once again. So please don't hold on to a belief that's proving to be too costly for your mental health. The next slide, please. Okay, is there a comment? Uh, right. So let's test it. Like I said, my belief was I'm not good at job interviews. What evidence do you have that you are not good at job interviews? How many job interviews have you given so far? Ask for feedback. How have I done in other interviews? What could be other alternatives? I did okay in the interview, but I wasn't a good fit, like I just now discussed. Maybe I wasn't the right fit for this kind of a job. For the next job, maybe I'll be a better fit. Someone else was more qualified. What are the implications, even if your belief is correct? Okay, I am bad. My interview was bad. Fine. What are the implications? That doesn't mean just because I'm bad, I'll just gloat in self pity and forget about everything and close the doors and become depressed. No, I can get training on how to do job interviews. I can go for a short training. And what is the usefulness of holding on to that belief? Not very. It will just make me feel bad, and I will not want to give any other interviews. So it's better not to hold on to a belief that is making me feel bad anyways. Let's go. So this is the ABCDE model. So the adverse event, the belief, then the consequences, and finally let's dispute that belief and find out if the belief, most probably the belief is not right. It, or even if it is right, the consequences of that is not as bad as we were thinking it to be. After disputation comes the E, which is known as energization. Next slide, please. That is, now that you have disputed your belief that was making you feel so down and depressed, you have a path of energy. You have a path to move forward and you feel more better and more positive. In this case, you will get an interview training and get to feedback from the interviewers. You will apply for a job in this company or other companies, and you will take care of whatever shortfalls you had. So, in a nutshell, you move forward, you dispute your negative thoughts, and you move forward. And in the process, you learn to grow a sense of positivity or a positive emotion. The next slide, please. The next slide. I'll just quickly brush through another therapy that we usually talk about, something known as acceptance and commitment therapy. As famously said, pain is inevitable. Pain occurs to everyone. There is no household which has never experienced pain. But suffering is optional. How much you're going to suffer in the face of pain is up to you. So here, Buddha and Viktor Frankl, the young psychiatrist who had realized in the concentration camp, they're having the same path. They're saying the way I look at an adversity and how much I'm going to suffer depends on me and only myself, no one else. The next slide, please. The acceptance and commitment therapy acronym is A stands for accept your thoughts and feelings and be at the present. Even if you're feeling so depressed, look at Viktor Frankl. He has lost everyone. So accept that I'm depressed and be in the present. Don't go to the past. Then you will keep on missing, but just remain in the present. Try to survive. Then choose a valued direction in life. Dispute, even if you can't dispute, even if all your beliefs, all your negative thoughts are actually true, you choose a valued direction. You must have, for that, in order to have acceptance and commitment in life, you must have a valued direction in life, which basically means a strong set of values. Why do I exist? What is my duty to perform in this life? So if you have a clear rudder, and it's like a ship which is in choppy waters, if you have a clear vision that this is the direction in which I must move my ship so that one day I'll reach the shore, that valued direction is extremely important to survive in choppy waters or stormy weather. Once you have that, you take action and move forward. If we get some other day, we might actually talk more about acceptance and commitment therapy, which is a beautiful way of looking at it. The next slide, please. I'll just talk. This is Rumi's poem, which is often quoted by practitioners of mindfulness. In this poem, I can't see the whole thing, but the basic thing is that they say that the emotions that come to you, they may be positive ones, they may be negative ones, but treat them like a guest. Don't say that, no, I don't want to feel depressed, I don't want to feel sad. No, depression, sadness, joy, positive and negative emotions are both part of us. So this is where it is slightly different. The approach of acceptance and commitment is slightly different from positive psychology, where they say that accept both your positive and negative emotions. Even the violent storm, accept it. The storm will probably, play ruckus inside your home. All furniture will be topsy-turvy. But at the end of the day, probably, this will lead to something new. As Tagore had famously said, ki, মুছে যাক গ্লানি, মুছে যাক জরা, অগ্নি স্নানে শুচি হোক ধরা. মানে, if everything burns away, that could be a new beginning. So Ruby also said that treat everything, a storm and also a gentle breeze, both are a part of you. Both your positive and negative emotions are part of you. Accept them, let them be, and then try to move forward. The next slide. I just coming to the last part of my presentation because I thought I'll add one or two slides about spirituality, religion, and psychiatry. Sigmund Freud, the father of modern psychoanalysis, had famously wrote a book called The Future of an Illusion. He had felt that religion is basically an illusion. We need it because people need religion because they need solace in times of crisis. And someday Sigmund Freud believed that there will be no need for religion. It's an illusion which will vanish. But now 100 years have passed, almost 100 years, I won't say 100, but almost, more than half a century has passed. We are still nowhere around that point of time. We no longer need religion. Of course, people do make a difference between what we call religion and spirituality. Let's come to the next slide. There is, of course, a difference between religion and spirituality. Spirituality, you must have, I'm sure that this must have been discussed before. I'll just quickly go through from a psychiatrist's point of view or a therapist's point of view. Spirituality is something that is opposed to materialism. So you can be an atheist. At the same time, you may have no God, but at the same time, you can be a spiritual person. It is closely connected with religion, but it is not exclusively contained by religion. It is minus the trappings of any religion. You don't have to pray 3 times a day. You don't even have to believe in God, like Buddhism, famously. There's no God in Buddhism, but still it's an intensely spiritual kind of thing. There are newer terms like what we call spirituality, but not religious, SBNR. So you can be spiritual without being religious, and something known as MRB or multiple religious belongings. A part of me may believe in some of the Buddhist ideals, another part may believe in some of the tenets of Christianity or some of Hinduism. So one single person can have multiple religious belongings. There is nothing conflictual about it. Next slide. The next one. No, I think the next slide we are talking about. Yeah. So I'll just end up that this is we have our national journal is Indian Journal of Psychiatry. In one of the editorials, guest editorials by a very senior and respected psychiatrist, he had written it that spirituality is a very important dimension of mental health, and he had actually made some, like I said, even the World Health Organization recognizes that total holistic well-being includes both physical, mental, and spiritual health. And some of the important recommendations that were made in the Indian Journal of Psychiatry a couple of years back were the next slide. The next slide. Yeah. We said that for every illness, we must not just have a biopsychosocial model, we must have a biopsychosocial spiritual model. So behind the etiology of every illness, there is a biology. There is a biology like the brain, what's happening in the brain and the neurotransmitters. There is also the psychology, and the society in general sometimes can give rise to mental illnesses. But you must also know that spiritual upheavals can give rise to mental disturbances as well. So we must include, we are teaching not our students nowadays to include patients' spiritual background, religious beliefs, disillusionment in his religious beliefs, etc., and history taking. Please don't be dogmatic. I keep telling my students, my MD psychiatry students, please don't be dogmatic, but at least keep a note about these things. If the patient wants to say, at least be prepared to listen. Don't say, madam, this is what has this got to do with being a doctor? I said, no. I mean, that's why we are psychiatrists. We are blessed to be psychiatrists, where we can mix up humanities and liberal arts with science. Respect, support, and listen to the patient. Partner with religious workers if necessary, because some of them are doing excellent job. They are providing very good counseling, as we can see. Incorporate spirituality in the treatment if it helps. There's something known as spirituality, something known as cognitive behavior therapy, which is spirituality assisted. So that is something it's too complicated for the scope of this presentation. And finally, it was recommended that there should be more and more research into this dimension, where I look forward to it. Maybe someday we can collaborate and do some research work about the spiritual dimensions of mental health. Thank you so much for giving me a patient listening. I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Pratima Chaudhary, for such a wonderful presentation. And your slides were so lively that it was really enjoying to go through it. You put in your entire practice and your academic thing, and you really explained so many dimensions. You told that go beyond treatment, how to promote positive health, example of unchaining, bedlam, psychotherapy, unwinding knots inside people brain. We have moved a long way. Then you also explain second pillar of positive psychology to promote well-being and discover happiness. And then you also explain role of creativity and look beyond yourself, live in peace and others. You very nicely explained the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and so much important it is. Thank you for that. Then you also explain why I'm doing this, world of self-actualization, how positive emotion leads to strong immunity. That was very interesting. I was not aware of that positive emotion leads to strong immunity. And you also explain happiness is process, not an end goal. And people can be taught to bring happy mental health professionals. And you also nicely explained if we keep steady level positive emotion, our brain releases happy chemicals. This was also new dimension for me to know. And you would look at positive relationship. What do you contribute to the world? Character, strength, learn to be positive and resilience. You brought in so many dimensions, ma'am, including acceptance and commitment theory with the example of Buddha, value direction in choppy waters. And finally, you also explained the role of spirituality, religion, and psychotherapy and psychiatry. Thank you for this wonderful presentation. And we have few questions for you, ma'am, if I could put them across to you, and we would like to hear your answer for them. This is from Dr. Shantanu. If 50% of positive acceptance is inherited and 10% is situational, what is the role of medication, antidepressant in happiness therapy, ma'am?
Okay, I'll tell you something. We prescribe antidepressant when somebody goes into a clinical depression. Just a sad mood is not an indication for giving medicines, because we all go through sad moods. But there are certain criteria, like if you're feeling perpetually sad for at least 2 weeks, and there are some associated physiological symptoms like your sleep, your appetite, etc., have been affected, or if you are feeling suicidal, then a psychiatrist decides to prescribe medicines for this person. As we just now said, behind every mental illness, there is a biopsychosocial and spiritual causation. So there is the biology of depression, which we can't ignore. Sometimes maybe just a small trigger, and sometimes even without any trigger, somebody can go into depression. So as a doctor, then it's my duty to correct the chemical imbalance that's happening inside this person's brain so that he can get fight with his depression. But like I said, some people go more easily into depression than others. Who will go more who will develop depression in the face of adversity? Part of it is, of course, decided by genetics. But a lot of it can also be, like I said, that if we can catch them young, if we can start long before they develop depression, if we can make it a part of school curricula, that how to develop resilience, how to develop positive emotions, then we are more likely to see less cases of depression. So it is that part where I was working before depression sets in. If we can, build up, like you said, if you build up immunity, you develop less illness. It's similar. If you build up more positive emotions, then there are less chances of people developing clinical symptoms and syndromes of psychiatric illnesses.
There are a few more questions, ma'am. Another from Dr. Shantanu. Is the Japanese concept of ikigai truly grounded and supported by psychological theory?
Ikigai there's a lot of talk about ikigai. That's, basically it means, as you all know, that getting up in the morning, maybe with what is this day for? It's basically translates into meaning of life. So basically it's that, what is why do I exist, and what is the cause for why do I live for today? So definitely, actually, we say that when we are going into, there has been a lot of study, there has been a research, there has been a lot of research on different modes, and ikigai is also one of them. There are quite a few studies to say that the concepts of ikigai can be incorporated. Actually, if you go through mindfulness therapy, you will understand, and I'm sure you know, and I'm just, maybe this is a repetition, but there are other things like the Japanese Zen, then the Taoism. They have mindfulness actually borrows heavily from Taoism, from the Zen, this thing, and of course Buddhism from us, and definitely from the Western philosophers, even Stoicism. Even Stoicism, something like that. So it's an eclectic approach. If somebody is comfortable with the concept of ikigai, nothing is stopping us. So I think ultimately it's the fit between the therapist and the client, or the patient, as we call it. So whatever I find suitable for my patients, I'll use it to boot. I'll use it to the best of my ability. So if ikigai helps, it helps. And yes, I think I have to answer your question whether there is scientific evidence. Yes, there are quite a few studies that are telling us that this concept really some people, not all, but some.
Few more questions, ma'am, which there are for you. This is from Dr. Tinni Goswami. In India, we have such an infrastructure for mental health to help the mass or the poor people who perhaps not in a position to take the help of professional help. So how do we deal with that situation, ma'am?
Yes, this is very, very true, because we have got very few psychiatrists. If you look at it per 1,000 population, how many psychiatrists we have, that's very low. And it depends from state to state. Like in the southern states, the ratio is better, and with psychologists, the ratio is, it's very bad. Nothing to talk about. Very few psychologists, mostly concentrated in the cities. So we really have to take the help of others. So we can use, like we say, we can train lay counselors, which we are doing. Even if they don't have a full MPhil degree in psychology, we can treat them. At least they can give the basic support, and if necessary, they can refer them to us. Similarly, like I was reading up some of the recommendations. Even today, religious teachers have a massive impact in the mind of people. We are not as yet, we value religion a lot, religion or spirituality, or whichever way you call it. And people, instead of coming to us, when I feel sad, when somebody feels sad, let's say in the far-flung villages, they will not come to a psychiatrist. They will probably go to the spiritual person whom he has faith. From his childhood, he has seen this person. So maybe he'll go to the nearest mosque or the nearest temple and talk it up. So I think we have to collaborate with them. This is the need of the hour. We can't just say, no, no, this can be this. It's not. We will not. We'll look the other way around. No. If we have to give service to all our people, then we have to collaborate with people in the community. That's a very valid point raised by Dr. Goswami, and I appreciate that.
There's another very sensitive questions from Tinni Goswami ji. Tinni Goswami, I'm putting it across to you. Being a professional, what is your opinion on the fact that still we cannot accept someone with severe mental health issues and brand that person as insane?
Yes, it is unfortunate, and we are still working with it. But even today there's a lack of clarity. I have seen even among doctors, people tend to think that people have told me what to do, please come and see this patient, he's making a ruckus in the ward or something like that. People are still scared. There are stereotypes like that. As a professional, I think we we still have a long way to go. We are trying our best, and what I try to do is that psychiatrists or mental health professionals are already there, but I try to teach my undergrad students, those who are doing their MBBS. I try to talk it out to them. And I think media is also playing a good role. Sometimes they play a counterproductive role. Some media portrayals are horrible. They kind of make it sound so, some of those Hollywood movies and all, I mean, it's nothing could be far away from the truth. But some of them are very sensitive portrayals. And like I'll give you an example. If you remember, long back there was a movie called Tare Zameen Par. I
Yeah.
can't tell you that no matter how much we had talked about dyslexia and all, but this single movie, Tare Zameen Par, so many people had come down to us. So I think media has a role. We have a role, and not just me as a mental health professional, everyone. We have to do it. I have seen one thing, I have seen, those who have a mentally ill person in their family, they're usually more tolerant to the issue of mental illness. That is I have seen this, because the familiarity, the more familiar you get to something, the fear goes down. If you see it from a far away, oh Baba, somebody has schizophrenia, that must be really dangerous, this person must be really violent or something like that. On the other hand, if you have your mother who's suffering from schizophrenia, you have seen her and you have seen how she's struggling, and probably with the medicines she's so much better, then your attitude towards mental health goes. So this is another thing, I think, that more and more integration of these mentally health people into society, so that people get to see them. I still remember, in a place where I did my MD, the canteen was run by mentally ill people. Okay, so we used to tell them, "Aaj ke we'll," they would clearly remember what brand of, for the male doctors, what brand of cigarettes they loved. So but I still, those formative years of my life, I was young then, but having mentally ill people who are doing well and serving us tea and coffee, and I think for once, no, textbooks could not do it. So integration is important, sensitization is important, and there's no other way out.
Uh, there's one more question, ma'am. This is from Gopal Krishna Mandal. His question is, ma'am, do you agree that psychology of the Gita is one of the best ways of stress management?
Yes, I do. Because, and there is something known as, it is well established, something known as, bibliotherapy, we call it. Basically, sometimes certain books or certain things, it is much easier for people to understand. Because I still remember, supposing somebody has died and you want to, you somehow, you console, then just nothing, no matter what, but just that single sloka Vashansi Jirnani, that kind of gives you a peace of mind. This can also happen. I have seen many people get peace of mind from Tagore. It could be Gita, it could be Tagore, but the principles that are embedded in Gita is one of the finest across the world. It has got nothing to do with Hinduism or anything. It can be applied to anyone. It's one of the finest, I can say. Definitely.
Ma'am, I'm right now in Bombay while I'm doing this conference live webinar with you. And Mumbai is a city of lot of stress and tension, like Kolkata or any other city like London or New York. So my question is this issue of dealing and reaching out to psychologists only limited to the pandemic time, or it should be more broadened? And you gave some wonderful example of how a person was neglected during a job, or this girl from Bangladesh, you gave an example. So the question is during pandemic time, the role of psychologists and psychiatrists is becoming more relevant now when people are recognizing it? That's my question to you, ma'am.
Yes, if you ask me, in my chamber, there is a surge because this is unprecedented. I mean, we never faced this kind of crisis in the entire generation, and so naturally people are having more problems and they are reaching out definitely we have also seen the government sites, of course, they do have children, but I just said if the trauma is there, can be growth. So I hope this makes people more aware. They no longer shun people with mental illnesses as people who are quote unquote insane, because they themselves have gone through it. Once I have gone through it, I can't possibly, I'll probably understand it better. So I just hope one good thing that comes out of it is overall better awareness of mental health and more patience. That's very important. More patience and more acceptance about people with mental illness.
Th- th- Thank you, ma'am, for your wonderful interaction and your wonderful slides which you presented and
So
the
much.
overall perspective. We at the organizing committee are extremely thankful to you for your time and for this presentation. And
Thank you
I
so
take
much.
this opportunity to
My
thank
pleasure.
the organizing committee to have me as a moderator on this wonderful session. Thank you, Prathamaji.
Thank you so much. My pleasure once again. My pleasure.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am, for delivering and enlightening us with such an wonderful uh, session where we could learn a lot about how to keep ourselves calm in this you know depressing and quite tense situation. Thank you so much. Now we shall be moving on to our valedictory session. In our valedictory session, we have amongst us Professor Ranjana Roy. She is the Vice President of the collaborating institution Kolkata Society for Asian Studies. Along with that, she is the Professor Emeritus of the Department of Anthropology of the University of Calcutta. Over to you, ma'am. Ma'am, if you can unmute yourself, then it will be easier for us to hear everything. Ma'am, could you please unmute yourself? Unmute yourself, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Please, please carry on. Uh, we are really sorry for the inconveniences. Due to some technical glitches, we had to skip our valedictory session. We are directly going on vote of thanks. Our vote of thanks shall be given by Dr. Soumitra Basu, who is the Secretary of the Collaborating Institution, Kolkata Society for Asian Studies. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. On this auspicious occasion, I am taking the privilege to propose the vote of thanks on behalf of the organizing committee of the 3-day-long webinar on spiritual well-being and stress management, a religio-psychological perspective. First of all, on behalf of Kolkata Society for Asian Studies, I wish to thank the Dean of Bhaktivedanta Research Center and the convener of this webinar, Dr. Sumanta Rudra, and all the organizing committee members, including Mr. Anurag Parekh, Administrative Dean, Bhaktivedanta Research Center, Dr. Abhishek Bose, Assistant Professor, Department of Comparative English Literature and Language, Calcutta University. I express my gratitude to the keynote speaker of this international webinar, Dr. Ferdinando Chardella, Assistant Professor, Department of Ethnology, History of Religions and Gender Studies, Stockholm, and the esteemed speakers for sharing their valuable thoughts and ideas on diverse religious traditions and uh, Dr. Tapati Mukherjee, Dr. Mans Bro, Dr. Kenneth R. Balpe, Dr. Amit Dey, MS Shilpa Cheda, Swami Mahamedhananda, Dr. Father Davis George, Dr. Piali Chakraborty, and Dr. Ruby Sain. We are also benefited with the practical experience and advices from the two doctors of psychiatry, Dr. Soumitra Basu and Dr. Prothoma Chaudhary. We are really grateful to you for your impressive, erudite, and significant lectures. I am expressing my heartfelt thanks to our valuable advisory body members. Firstly, Dr. Shantanu De, Associate Professor History, Ramakrishna Mission, Vidya Mandir, Belur. He is also one of the conveners of this webinar. Dr. Tinni Goswami, Head, Department of History, St. Xavier's College, Kolkata. She is the coordinator of this webinar. Dr. Ruby Shine, Professor Emeritus, Adamas University. Dr. Sheikh Makbul Islam, Director, Sri Jagannath Research Center, Associate Professor, Department of Bengali, St. Paul's Cathedral, Kolkata. Dr. Satyabrata Chakraborty, President, Kolkata Society for Asian Studies. Dr. Ranjana Roy, Vice President, Kolkata Society for Asian Studies. I extend my special thanks to Dr. Arpita Basu, Treasurer, Kolkata Society for Asian Studies, for taking the responsibility to moderate the second session of the third day, and Dr. Ranjana Roy. But I'm sorry that she cannot join today for her valedictory session. I am thankful to both of our hosts who made this program successful with their continuous support, are Shivangi Purohit and Srimanti Ghoshal. They are presently research scholars in Bhaktivedanta Research Center. Finally, I would like to take the opportunity to place on record a special thanks to the designer of this webinar, Pritam Dubey, and the technical lead, Mr. Ramkrishna Mondal, for logistic support extended towards all of us for organizing this event successfully. Thank you all. Namaskar.
Thank you, ma'am. Uh, it was, I hope all our participants experienced a nice 3-day international webinar. This is the final announcement of the day. And after announcing this, the session will be off. So all the registered participants will be receiving the feedback link over their mail. Thank you. And thank you everybody for attending this 3-day international webinar. Hope to see you, all of you, in our next endeavors. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.